We're glad to have Dr. Lalman with us today. He's talking a little bit about the evolution and the impact of technology when it comes to our beef cattle business. Dr. Lalman?
I'll just say right now, all I'm going to be able to do is scratch the surface. This is an awesome topic, but it's a challenge to address because there's been so much happen. And so thanks to Hugh and others that are on the committee that invited me to come talk about this today. It's really stimulated some interesting thought and discussion. Goodness, they suggested that we talk about technology, evolution, and impact back to 40 years. Well, it turns out when you're talking about technology development and advancement, that's a long time. So what is technology? In this definition, it says application of the scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry. Almost everything you touch today has been impacted by this. We're going to talk more about the scientific knowledge that's been implemented in the beef cattle industry. Who is this? This is General Stewart, Jeb Stuart, and he was the general of the Confederate cavalry. Okay, now, in today's terms, this is General Robert E. Lee's cell phone. Right? Think about this for a minute. Okay? Jeb Stuart took off and crossed the Potomac River and headed northeast of the Union Army. He was supposed to make haste, engage, he was supposed to gather supplies, but he was supposed to get and join the Union Army somewhere up there north of Gettysburg. Well, immediately when he took off on that campaign, he was delayed. All kinds of things happened in those about 5 days, 4 to 5 days there that slowed him down. And so, General Lee's method of communication was just sort of out there somewhere to the north and east. He had no information. He did not know, General Lee did not know where exactly the Union Army was. Okay, now he knew in general where it was, but that's not going to do him any good when he's the invader, right? He's trying to select the battleground, General Lee, and he was pretty good at doing that, wasn't he? That's why he was so famous for whipping the Union in all those previous battles, because he was really wise military leader. But he was without his cell phone. And so the Union wound up accidentally getting the ridge, the fish hook, all the way down to Little Round Top and Round Top. The Union wound up with the high ground, and it was kind of an accident. And I guarantee you, well, I can't guarantee you, that was a long time ago, but if General Lee had gotten there first, guess who would have been on top of that ridge? Right? This is from Benjamin Moore, who's the retired colonel of the U.S. Army. He said, in all Lee's previous battles, Stuart had been the eyes and ears of Lee's army. In his absence and out of touch, Lee was operating blind and deaf. If Stuart had been present on the morning of July 1st, there would probably never have been a battle at Gettysburg. That was technology back then, right? A horse and a bunch of cavalry to communicate. That was their method of communication. And you think about how we accomplish those things today. Just kind of overwhelming. This is a picture of things that occurred in 1975. 1976, inflation continues to be a problem around the world. The Concorde enters service and cuts transatlantic flying time to 3.5 hours. 1 year after Microsoft is formed, Apple is formed by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Nadia Comaneci, is that how you say that? Scores the first ever perfect score in gymnastics. South Africa, riots in Soweto marked the beginning of the end of apartheid. Here's a cool one. In music, the first of the punk bands appear. The Damned released New Rose. Average cost of a new house was $43,000. Average income, $16,000 in 1976. Average monthly rent, and I have a daughter renting an apartment in Stillwater right now, and I wish she could rent an apartment for $220, Ron Hayes. Cost of a gallon of gas was 59 cents. So there you go. 1976, 40 years ago. You can see a lot of things on those pictures that are way different today, right? I was telling the group just a little bit earlier, I hate to have to admit this now, but it was really cool when we got our first nice set of stock racks for the pickup. And you either loaded cattle on a big straight truck, or you loaded them, if you had just a few head, you loaded them in the stock racks of the pickup. And my family's from Kansas, and we'd haul them up to the Kansas City stockyards. Okay, and I was really proud of that first set of stock racks. We do things differently today, don't we, than we did in 1975. How about that set of working facilities? Alan Greenspan said, the phenomenal gains in U.S. agricultural productivity of the past century brought profound benefits to all consumers, regardless of their connection to a farm, in the form of lower prices, better quality, and more choices at retail outlets. You all have accomplished that. We should rise to the challenges that come with innovation, because innovation brings great improvements in material well-being. And because of the changes that you have made, adopted, accepted, embraced, our country is better off, and we have a better quality product. So let's talk about just a few of these technology adoptions and changes over time, just to kind of give you some perspective. One of my graduate students, a pretty good photographer, he's been doing an experiment for 2 years now. He took this picture just a few months ago. Obviously, it was a few months ago, it was last summer, right? I want you to look at that right quick and tell me, what technologies do you see there that maybe have been, some of them probably go a little beyond 40 years, but what do you see? Crossbreeding. Black Baldies, Hereford Angus cross cows. Yep, lifetime productivity increase of about 25%. You know what's kind of gone on in the cattle industry? It's maybe not completely fair statement, but it's not far from it. And that is, while we have improved many things, and you're going to hear about a lot of those improvements, one thing we've decided in general is say no thanks to that 25% in crossbreeding, which primarily benefits you from a cow longevity standpoint and from fertility standpoint. There's a lot more things there. Ear tags. What kind of ear tags? See those fly tags? You see any flies on those cows? It's kind of hard to tell, but yeah, fly tags. When would they have come into being? 80s? Probably a little before the 80s, I would guess. Probably, I'm going to guess in the 70s. I don't know, but somewhere in that neighborhood. What else? There's a lot of grass, isn't there? Somebody forgot to calculate the stocking rate, didn't they? But we don't think of something as simple as proper stocking rate as technology. But it is. It's knowledge that we've used to benefit our industry, and you could use to benefit your bottom line. Okay, now these cows happen to be in a system study where we have purposefully stocked at a low stocking rate, so we're prepared to handle any drought without having to depopulate cows. Might be a little bit extreme in terms of the optimum, where you're striving to find that optimum between moderate to low risk and as high of income as you can achieve at that low rate of risk. We're not finished.
Cube
There's a cake feeder there, right? Protein supplementation. One of the most dramatic nutritional discoveries in the last 100 years, probably, is this technology of protein supplementation when you have a protein deficiency. Now, it doesn't do you much good when you don't have a protein deficiency, but if you've been around the cattle industry much and you turn out a set of cows on old dry, even this time of year, old dry forage, and don't do anything, you know what happens. And just a little bit, even a pound a day of a high protein supplement source of some types, it's just a really big bang for your buck. You just watch those cattle, their manure starts to get soft again, the patties spread out, the cattle slick off, they can eat a lot more forage, they digest more of what they consume. It's just an incredible technology development, discovery, if you will, that occurred quite some time ago. Last thing, one more. How about the truck? How long have we been feeding cattle with pickups, supplementing? Tell us, how did you used to do it when you were a kid? Do you have a pickup? I know you didn't have a cake feeder. 5-gallon bucket or a... My dad thought, he thought whole cottonseed was a really good supplement as long as you had teenagers. Okay? So we used silage forks, and we did have a pickup, but the teenager was the conveyor. Okay, so all the way to today where, technology, you just can't hardly look in any direction without bumping into all kinds of neat technology. And this is a picture of my Cattle Facts app on my phone. So the technology just surrounds us. And here's some things that have been accomplished in the beef cattle industry in the last 40 or so years. Some of them go back maybe a little bit further than that. And the list could just go on and on. Artificial insemination, wormers, antibiotics, ionophores, implants, hormone injections, beta-agonists, national cattle evaluation. Just incredible impact on the industry. Synchronization, semen storage and extending. We take that for granted now. Pregnancy testing. And here's the more recent developments. Ultrasound maybe 20 or 30 years ago. Blood protein tests, brand new really, from a 40-year perspective. Embryo transfer. Of course, EPDs from this national cattle evaluation, genomic enhanced selection, and disease testing like PI BVD testing that we have available today. Okay, then if you want to go post-harvest, we could continue this list for quite a while here too. And I've just listed a few that I could think of: radiation, electrical stimulation, injected product enhancement, modified atmosphere packaging. Our product is much, much better quality product than it was 40 years ago, thanks to all of these enhancements and developments. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about EPDs. This is a combination of things. And that list you see at the top there doesn't get it all. But EPDs, AI synchronization, embryo transfer, and you can also, okay, this is adjusted yearling weights in the Angus breed here, 847 pounds, and this is not genotypic trend, this is the phenotype, okay? These are actual adjusted weights in the Angus breed. Okay, 847 pounds in 1972. In 2015, the average phenotypic yearling weight in bulls was 1,217 pounds. 270-pound increase in that time period. So some of that's due, a lot of that's probably due to increased growth genetics. Some of it's due to management, the environment, if you will, nutritional programs, the diets that we feed to cattle while they're on test, perhaps improved forage systems. Many things involved there. In particular, EPDs, the utilization, the adoption of EPDs have allowed us to accomplish this: adjusted birth weights, What's the average adjusted birth weight in the industry right now? Anybody have an idea? What's your average birth weight? About 80. It's right around 79. 2015, the Angus breed, it was 79 pounds. Some parts of the country, particularly in the South, we just don't worry about dystocia anymore. Okay, when I was a young man working as a herdsman at Montana State, I stayed during calving season in the beef barn office on a cot all night long and got up every 2 hours and went out and checked the heifers. And if there was a heifer calving, there was probably about a 25 to 30 or 40% chance that she was going to need help. Okay, what a mess, right? Compared to today. We're going to have dystocia problems, right? I mean, you're going to have a leg back or a head back. You're going to have problems. But we take care of that mess when we select the bull now. I mean, it's just so easy to do with the tools that we have available today. The world has changed dramatically. We just don't even consider, at least at our operation, we just don't consider dystocia a problem anymore because it's so easy to manage and prepare and plan for, right? Thanks to that technology. What about beef quality? And we could talk about this for hours. I'm just going to show you what's happening quality grade. I hope you're paying attention. Cattle grading USDA choice and above in 2006, early in my career, we could get 50 to 55% of our cattle to grade choice as an industry. And now we're just marching ahead. It's nothing now to find one producer would have cattle that grade 50, 60%, not just choice, CAB, because of the technology that we have available to make that happen. This is last week's national average right here, 71% choice and above across the entire industry. Incredible, incredible improvements. Anybody use this bull? Some of you might not want to admit it. Keneally Consensus 7229. The industry in 2014 registered, so seed stock calves out of this bull registered. If you went to Oklahoma National Stockyards last week, you sat down there on Monday morning when the sale started, and you watched those big lots of calves come through there, and you sit there for hour after hour after hour watching all those calves sell. At the end of the day, you would have seen thousands. How many thousands at Oklahoma City? Somewhere around close to 7,000 head last week. They could have all been sired by him in 2014. Registered. That bull registered about that many calves. One bull in 2014. Is that incredible or what? And we have a relatively low percent of beef cattle producers in our business, low percentage that use AI. Okay, think if that went up to 20 or 30% adoption rate. I think we're still rocking somewhere around 8 to 10% adoption of AI. And of course, it's mostly the seed stock industry. This is an EPD that's just been released by the Hereford breed. I'm really excited about this one, okay, because it's focused on the cow. Sustained cow fertility. These kind of tools are beginning to become available now, and it's a really exciting time to be in the cattle business because of all the, not only the technology we've adopted over the last 40 years, but the things that are coming in just right around the corner. Sustained cow fertility results reported in percentage units are oriented such that larger breeding values reflect sires whose daughters calve annually for more years. Okay, is that cool or what? I have for a long time now, I've been concerned that we are, like I said earlier, we give lip service to the cows, And what we're really focused on is feeding and carcass quality segments of our industry. That's where the majority of these improvements in technology have taken place. Okay, and we can look at evidence of that all day long. This one's focused on the cow and true fertility. I have a good friend, seed stock producer in their operation. They won't consider flushing a cow until she's had 10 calves in a row, and every one of them have to ratio above 100. I think that's the way that works. 10 calves in a row, never missed a calf, and then they might consider them for the flush herd. Now, is that a commitment to making sure their cows match their forage resources? And is that a commitment to improving fertility? You're darn right it is. Okay, that's impressive. And that's what this kind of an EPD could do for us. Which one of those do you like? 2 bulls in the Hereford breed. Both of them have 200 plus females in production. Guess what? One of those bulls has a sustained cow fertility of 170, and one has a sustained cow fertility of 57. Ouch. Which one would you use if you're going to retain heifers and be in the cow business for 30 years? This means that there's a high probability that after a 60-day breeding season, that bull's daughters are not going to stick around. They're not going to be pregnant. And this means that this bull's daughter, and I'm not going to tell you which one is which, that bull's daughters have a really high likelihood of hanging in there. Okay? And a lot of those would survive that 10 years never missing a calf, weaning a calf every year, doing the right thing year after year after year. Now that's cow efficiency. Okay? That's exciting. We tend to leave a lot on the table. In all the technology we have available, we have utilized a lot of it pretty well, but we still leave some on the table. Let me just give you a quick example. Last year, we did a Ralgrow study. Okay, Ralgrow's been around for how long? 35-ish, 40 years. These are the students' results. 200 steer calves implanted with Ralgrow branding. 19 pounds more weaning weight. 19. Okay, what's a Ralgrow cost? $1.25. 19 pounds in today's market, you know, it's worth somewhere between $20 and $30, depending on what the value of gain is, the value of additional weight. Here's where we're at. Current use of implants, and this was done just a few years ago by the National Animal Health Monitoring System. Smaller herds, almost no use of calf hood implants. Larger herds, 27%, 25%, somewhere in that neighborhood. So adoption of this technology in the cow-calf segment is quite low, surprisingly so to me at least. Okay? Operation size, this was 1995, and this is larger operations. 64% were using calf hood implants in their steers in the middle 90s. Today, it's more like 30%. So it's not just the little operations, the hobby farms that are sort of passing on this technology. It's the moderate size and larger operations. Let me show you a little different picture of that. Okay, this is Superior Livestock video data. Here's the implanted group. This is percent of their sale lots, down to that 30%. See that? In the last few years, non-implanted, right there. How many cows do you have to sell cattle in Superior? Well, some of these lots are hundreds, but the smaller lots are how many? A truckload. How many's in a truckload? Or so, 85 to 100 head of 5-weight calves, right? 500 or so pounds. That means these operations have somewhere, and at a minimum, of 200 to maybe up to 250 cows and bigger, right? And look what they're doing. Does it still work? I just showed you. I just showed you the data from 2014, just recently. Yes, it works just as good as it did, that implant and others like it, just as well as they did in 1980. This is you. See that right there? Southern Plains Beef Symposium. A few months ago, we asked you, how many of you are implanting your steer calves? You said, 58% of you said, no. So my question to you is, why? If you can't answer that question, you need to study this and get an answer to that question. Okay, now this is a different meeting and it's a little hard to read, but let me explain to you right quick. This is at the ING Symposium in Oklahoma City, about 165 people from all over the country interested in the latest technology on confining cows part of the year and turning a feed yard into a cow plant. Maybe during a drought, maybe to increase the stocking rate on their place. Lots of reasons one might want to do that. Progressive producers interested in that topic, they basically said about the same thing. We are not implanting our steer calves at branding. Why not? They said, why not? Because they're not convinced that it works. I already showed you it still does. Number two, because they hope to get an all-natural premium or the opportunity for an all-natural premium when they go to market. Those calves at weaning time. Okay? That's what they told us. And this was in September, this last year. Here it is again. This is all the experiments that have been published in peer-reviewed papers. 26 experiments. This is my students' data right here. Okay, those others were all published in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. This one we submitted to the professional animal scientists for peer-reviewed publication last week. It still works. Okay? Get that out of your mind. You can go home confident that the technology is still efficacious. Now, here's the other issue, and this is Dr. Michael King's data from all that superior data. Millions and millions of head of cattle, thousands of lots of cattle over about a 10-year period or so. Contrary to the common perception, superior data says buyers don't care. I'd argue with him a little bit there. Buyers might be saying that you don't want to implant those calves because we don't want them implanted, so don't do it. Buyers might be saying that, and so they might care, but they know that if calves are implanted, prices paid to superior data are the same regardless of implant status. There's no downstream negative impact of a calf hood implant in the literature. None. Okay? So, if there's no true discount for implanting your calves, there's no downstream impact, negative impact for implanting your calves, and if it still works, at least you ought to know those things. And if it's your core value that you're not going to implant your calves for whatever reason, that's your business. But at least know why you're not going to do it. Okay? Don't just go with the flow and think that we ought not to be implanting our calves anymore because either it doesn't work or there's a risk at the market. Real quickly then, what about the entire production system? This is Dr. Chris Richards and his group's study on all-natural, true all-natural production system from the stalker phase all the way through finishing and into the packing plant, compared to conventional, which means they got implanted during the stalker phase, then they got implanted and utilized growth-enhancing technologies, meaning an ionophore implants and a beta-agonist, MGA if they were heifers, although as I recall these are all steer, this is all steer data. would be the conventional system, generally speaking, what we do now. Okay, so here's the feed yard performance. Say a little bit conventional cattle, a little bit more feed. Average daily gain, incredible response. 28% increase in average daily gain during the finishing phase. 19% improvement in feed efficiency, 7.5 to 1 compared to 6 to 1 feed efficiency. And by the way, this is about industry average feed to gain now, okay, compared to 8 to 1 in 1976. This is the hot carcass weight, the impact of hot carcass weight in that experiment. 137 pounds. Same animal. You could argue they're consuming a few more resources, a few more. Not a lot, but a few more. But with the same animal, we're producing that much more beef to meet the world's population protein needs. These are green technologies. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And I'm going to show you more data to suggest that. We need to not be backing up when it comes to utilizing these technologies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to improve, reduce the cost of food, to feed the growing population. Okay, these are green technologies, and we have no reason to apologize. This is the net return without premiums, and so if you just calculated a break even on these cattle after the feed yard phase, including the stocker phase, you had to have a $200+ premium check. Now, if you can get $225 or $250 premium, I mean, have at it. I would too. But that's about what it takes. And that I didn't recalculate that from today's market, but that's a big premium that you have to just say no thanks. Or if some of these loud voices in the consuming population get their way, be careful. This is one of those deals where if we get legislated out of utilizing these technology, they're going to get exactly what they asked for. And that's a whole lot more expensive food supply. Okay, that's what will happen. And we'll have a more negative impact on the environment. Take a look at this. And a lot of you have seen this in the media. This is Dr. Jude Capper's data published in 2011 in the Journal of Animal Science. It's really cool stuff. And she says that just looking at our production efficiency and impact on the environment compared 1977 to 2007. So we probably ought to have her do that again and update it again and see where we're at. In fact, I think they're working on that. Minus 16% reduction, in other words, 16% reduction in our carbon footprint since that time. And I've already showed you how that works from an animal performance and feed intake and that kind of thing, feed efficiency. 18% reduction in manure, 33% reduction in the amount of land required. That's green. That's how we're going to feed the world in the future and how we can feed more people now. Dr. Richard's data, I think I forgot to mention it, that animal with 137 more carcass weight in a year feeds 1.25 more people. Okay? 12% reduction in water, 19% reduction in feed, and 30% fewer animals required to produce the same amount of beef. That's why our cow herd's not as big as it used to be. It doesn't have to be as big. Dr. Capper's other publication, published in 2012, Journal of Animal Science, she looked at just the impact of if we just all of a sudden stopped using these growth-enhancing technologies, what would happen? What kind of impact would it have on the world and the environment? And including that, cyanophores, steroids, MGA, beta-agonists, and the primary one being used is right now in the industry is Optiflex. You can look at all this data, and it's really good stuff at this website, sustainablebeef.org. Okay, here's what she says. If we stopped using those technology, if we just said no thanks on that 137 pounds of increased carcass weight per animal, it'd be just like, same thing as 10 million more cattle required. So the population of cattle in Kansas and Iowa, you'd basically have to double it. 1,010 Rose Bowl stadiums filled with feed to produce the same amount of beef. Okay? 3 million more cars on the road would equal the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse emissions that would be created, because we have to plant more corn, we have to raise more feed, we have to have more cattle grazing, and so on. 17 million more acres of land needed, which is the size of Scotland. We'd have to reduce the number of cattle produced in the United States, so that would have to go somewhere in the world that's not as well developed. Well, turns out they think it would probably be in Brazil. Okay, they would basically have to clear 17 million acres of forest, rainforest, to produce the same amount of beef. And that, of course, trees do what to carbon dioxide? Take it out of the atmosphere. And so that would be equivalent to 3 billion, with a B, more metric tons of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere if we were to give up these green technologies. Oh, and 1.36 million homes annual requirement for water increase. I mean, that's basically how much the green technology we're using is saving the world to produce the same amount of beef. It's pretty cool. Pretty neat stuff. So we've come a long way, and I'm excited about the things that are available to us just even today.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Dr. Dave Lalman, we do appreciate your time today.